Okay, Gina, the floor is all yours. Take it away.
Cool. Thank you so much, Bo. It's so lovely to see you folks again and be back with you for, as Bo said, part two of four. So today we're going to talk about how we break big things down into small ones. You're probably here because you've tried all of the get stuff done tricks and they don't seem to be working. They don't seem to be sticking. They might work for a short time and then it becomes a challenge to get stuff done. And that's what a lot of this framework is about. It's how do we work with our brains to get stuff done. So, in short, breaking things down is like hacking our brain's reward system. So, instead of waiting for a really big thing to be finished, we are able to get that accomplishment feeling and that sense of dopamine from achieving the steps along the way. So, it's also about understanding and enjoying the journey as well as doing the thing that we've started to do. And also, things can be hard enough when we've got ADHD, and it also, I mean, life can be challenging enough. And when we add ADHD into the mix, it can often amplify those challenges. And day to day demands of roles of life can often feel never ending. We've always got something new to do, there's something more, new challenge, new problems, new projects. And all of the things that we do generally require prioritization, planning, and wrapped around with some form of process. And when we add ADHD into the mix, those struggles can really become amplified, particularly when we're in a state of burnout. And when we encounter these challenges, we can feel these challenges more deeply, and then it becomes quite overwhelming. And this means that many ADHD brains get stuck in this ADHD burnout cycle. But Gina, I hear you ask, what is the ADHD burnout cycle? Well, that's what I'm here to tell you a little bit about before we go into the framework. So the ADHD burnout cycle, we start doing a new thing and we get super excited. We've got all this energy, we're really interested, and then we start getting into a state where we're doing something. So we're discovering what we're doing. It's still fun, it's still interesting. And then when we actually have to do the thing that we set out to do, it's when our motivation can drop, which is where we get some decreased productivity. We can then get low energy and low interest in what we were trying to do in the first place. Miraculously, we end up delivering something and therefore we regain that momentum to then go back into this cycle of doing something new, our motivation dropping, etc., etc., etc. And some signs that you may be in this ADHD burnout cycle are things like decision fatigue, feeling like you're on 1% battery, unusually irritable, anxious, or apathetic. Just a little disclaimer here, this information aims to raise awareness. It's not intended to replace professional medical assistance, and always seek the advice of a healthcare professional regarding your health. And so talking a little bit more about the framework. So the ADHD aligned procrastination breaker framework, which as Bo said is a little bit of a mouthful. Maybe there's a rebrand in there somewhere. The idea is that what we're doing is we're breaking down the framework into smaller stages so we get a little bit more of some micro explanations of each piece of the framework. So if you've been here since day one, thank you so much for joining. If you've joined from today and this is your first session, absolutely fine. Each of these sessions are standalone and make sense as part of the framework or on their own. So what if you could tap into your interest-based nervous system and start going back into that excelling of your role, hacking your own dopamine and getting stuff done? And today we're going to go through how to break a big task down through a simple, kind way so that we can start to beat that procrastination a bit more and finally get the thing done that you've wanted to do for ages. For the procrastination breaker framework in its entirety, we talk about things when our motivation is dropping and we go back into the burnout cycle, for example. These two slides are very similar, with one with a lot less information in. And when we don't have a framework, when our motivation drops, we're fighting ourselves to regain that momentum and regain that place where we can start doing something again. When we add a framework like the procrastination breaker one, when our motivation is dropping, we've got something that we can tap into, whether or not you take away one step or four steps, you've got something that you can tap into before that motivation does drop so that you can hack into your own version of consistent motivation. It's so important for our ADHD brains that when we're breaking things down, that we align those things with our interest-based nervous system. Small wins themselves can really lead to dopamine boost, which keeps that motivation cycle going when we're in that phase of needing to accomplish something. So why is breaking things down so important for ADHD brains? Well, we have interest-based nervous systems. An interest-based nervous system is motivated by things like interest and passion and novelty and urgency. And we have different needs around internal motivation for doing things, external encouragement sometimes, and also engagement with what we're trying to do. A bit more in a bit more detail, the interest-based nervous system concept was introduced by a doctor called William Dodson, and he explains that a person with an interest-based nervous system must be personally interested in what they're doing, find that thing challenging, novel. It needs some sense of urgency. So we need to do it right now or nothing happens. So we get to this place where we're thinking, I either must do this now or that procrastination sets in. Some people are able to determine what is important and get motivated to do it, even when it's not interesting, which doesn't always work for ADHD brains. So what we need to do is we need to flip the script and we need to find something and experiment with some different things to find what works for us to be able to hack into our own motivation systems. So a little bit about me, for those of you that have seen this slide before, I'll whistle through it in less detail. But I'm Gina, and I've been running multi-million pound programs from a tech point of view for the last 10, maybe nearly 15 years now. On the surface, everything looked great, and I put that in inverted commas, but underneath I had no self-confidence and I was in this continuous burnout cycle, stuck in an endless cycle of procrastination and feeling like I wasn't good enough. And this is the exact framework that I've created and managed to find what works for me. And I've been able to share that with wonderful people like yourselves. So thank you so much for joining me today, and clients as I work as an ADHD coach and also content creator and educator to really help ADHDers build the life they deserve through education and coaching. So what does all of this mean? Firstly, we need to start looking at how we change our focus inputs, even if they're not explicit. If you look at the left-hand side and think that you've seen this before, this is based on a concept called the Eisenhower matrix, and it's how some people organize tasks. So you've got 4 ways of doing that: important, urgent, or you choose to ignore something, or you choose to delegate it to something else. And when I worked in a corporate job, this was the in thing for people to use, and it didn't seem to work with my brain. I understand things when they're important. I understand things when they're urgent. But in my head, everything's important and urgent, or nothing is important and urgent. So these focus inputs do not work with our interest-based nervous system. And in this workshop, we're going to tap into something that does work, using things from the interest-based nervous system that we talked about just a second ago. So inviting challenge, interest, novelty, and urgency into our space, being a bit playful and being a bit experimental with the things that we're doing to find the thing that works for us. So the toolkit is what you came for. So by the end of the session, you should have a toolkit that you can customize and that you can tap into when you need to break a big task down into smaller ones so it feels less overwhelming. And also to help with that task initiation when something may not be so much fun, and so we can get it done. So thanks for listening to me so far. Let's get started. So if we think about an example of organizing a workspace. So you think of the space that you're sat in, it could be a desk, it could be in an office, it could be in a home space, I don't know, it could be in a coffee shop. Specifically, what I'm talking about here is in a home environment as an example. So we could be using this for things like completing a report, etc., etc. I'm going to use one example to keep it as simple as possible. And then if you have any questions, if we want to talk through some other examples as we go through, wait for me to go through these slides, and I'm happy to go through another example with you if that's helpful. So if you see here, we've got one task, which is organize a workspace. So if somebody asked me to organize my workspace now and just gave me that one task, I feel quite frozen. I wouldn't really be sure what I was doing. So I'd be thinking, oh, I need to break it down. And then sometimes I can get into this phase of breaking things down into the smallest piece possible. And then I can get myself wrapped up in breaking things down and not doing anything. So I get stuck kind of in a pulley system between the two. So what we do first is we break it down into a couple of steps. I've got four here. So immediately we've gone from this overwhelming space of I'm going to I need to organize a workspace. Firstly, what does that even mean? To me, organizing a workspace, organizing my desk, for example, would mean that it was tidy and clear and it maybe had some plants on it and all of the clutter was gone. And maybe the 10 pens in the corner that haven't been used for ages are either working or they're not. The ones that aren't working going in the bin. Example. Why am I doing that? Why am I doing this task in the first place? Because my brain works best when I work in a tidy space. I've wanted to do it for ages. How do I go from that idea of I've got this big thing that I want to do into a place where I can actually get something done, where I can actually get my workspace organized? So what I'm going to do is use a piece of paper because I'm quite a tactile person. If you've seen me before, you'll know that I always have a pen in my hand, whether or not I'm writing with it. It's just a very tactile thing that I like to have with me. So what I'm going to do is use a pen and paper. I've got it as an example here, so I'm not going to write on a pen and with my pen and paper now, but I'm going to split this organized workspace into four chunks. The chunks are clear the desk, organize the paper, declutter the stationery, and add some personal touches. That's what all those images. I had a lot of fun on Canva making this. That's what those images mean. So those things in themselves can also be broken down into micro tasks. And the best thing about these kind of micro tasks is that we can tick them off. So once you've set out you've got your four sections as an example, that's already a tick. That's already a thing that I have done. Then look at it in a bit more detail of clearing the desk, for example. Clearing the desk could include things like removing items from the desk. So basically getting everything off the desk. So we've got a starting space. I'm going to sort those things into categories, stuff I'm going to keep, stuff I'm going to throw away. There may be some recycling things and there may be some things to donate. Step one, clear the decks, clear the desk. So we've got a place to start. I'm then going to wipe the desk down with a cloth. And the reason that's important is, again, we're continuing with this idea that we talked about at the beginning of the reason behind why I'm doing this, because I want a clear workspace, because I work best when I've got a clear head and it makes me a lot more creative. I have a lot more fun in the space that I'm in if it's clear. My head feels a lot calmer. And to add to that, this is going to be a theme through all of these four sections around timers. We set a timer for 10 minutes. So the first 10 minutes, all I'm going to do is clear the desk. I'm going to sort the stuff into four categories. So I've got my timer set. So I've got a time trial going now, which has piqued my interest already. Even talking about it, I'm excited. So I've got a time trial in 10 minutes. The idea is I'm going to have cleared my desk. I'm going to sort things into categories. I'm going to wipe down the desk. That's all I need to do. It's going to take me 10 minutes. One of the things that we could add in here is little breaks in between. So you've spent 10 minutes clearing the desk. You then have a little break, a 5-minute break. Again, you can use a timer, whether that's to get some water, whether that's to do a little dance, whatever you choose. But the first task is to clear the desk. Once we've come back from that little break, we're going to then organize the papers. I don't know how much paperwork you folks have on your desk, but I absolutely love paper. I'm always scribbling, and some of those things are useful, some of them are not. Again, I'm going to use that timer because I can get really distracted when I'm looking at papers, because it could be, I don't know, something that I wrote 2 years ago about my favorite way to make a cup of coffee. I don't know, it's probably really irrelevant to what I'm doing right in that moment. So the micro task of the time trial really helps focus my mind. Again, I'm setting myself little challenges essentially, and the challenge here is to organize those papers, gather them all up. Again, we're going to sort things into categories. File, I'm going to do something with this one. I'm going to shred the other file. If I've got a lot of papers, I might want to use folders or trays, whatever. Again, using timers can be a really effective way of setting yourself a challenge, which is then gives you that urgency and that excitement to do the thing. Again, could have a little dance break after this one as well, and kind of go back into that celebration mode, which we will talk about in step 4, which is by far my favorite part of this whole procrastination breaker framework. Breaking it down one includes that. So I'm having a great time talking to you folks about this today. Step 3 here is around decluttering stationery. So again, set a timer, 5-10 minutes, doesn't matter. Once it goes off, we see how much we've got done. Either go again, this goes with all of these. We can either go again for a little bit more time, or we can have a little break and start again. All of these things are open to experimentation. They're up to you to have fun with. It's not the be all and end all if it doesn't work exactly like this for you. It's a toolkit that you can use to be playful with, be fun, have some fun with it. So now we're on step 3. We've cleared the desk, we've organised the papers, we've decluttered the stationery. I think one thing with the decluttering of the stationery is checking our pens, making sure they work. If they work, they go in one place. If they don't, they go in the bin. Again, timers, etc., etc. And then the final step here is around personal touches. So whether or not, I don't know, there's a plant or there's some books that you really want on your desk, which is around making this space personal to you when you're when you're decluttering, when you're changing your desk space. Personal items, whether it's a photo, I don't know, I've got a little potato here that says positive potato. I may be tiny, but I believe in you. Go do your thing. Positive potato is pride of place on my desk. And again, that makes me feel happy. The little positive potato makes me feel very happy when I look at them. So I'm adding things to my workspace that work for me. And again, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, give it a go, see how much you get done in that time frame. I think I touched on this a little bit just a minute ago, but personalization is everything in this process. I've given some examples of things that really work for me and also things that have worked for my clients as well. They may not work for you, but once we start experimenting with these things, we start to have a little bit of fun with them. We start to realize what does and doesn't work for us. And to understand the thing that doesn't work for us, I think is just as valuable as understanding a thing that does, because we can then say, this doesn't work for me. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to try something else. And it allows us to have a bit of fun with the idea of organizing a desk, as an example. A couple of pitfalls to avoid. So things around overcomplicating things, perfectionism, and lack of flexibility. So overcomplicating things, for example, when I spoke right at the beginning around breaking things down into lots and lots and lots of steps, which then becomes even more overwhelming. And then you've got 15,000, probably a bit dramatic, but 15,000 things that then feel unsurmountable. Choose a smallish number between 3 and 5. And then once one thing is done, you can then break that down into smaller steps, as an example. Where have we got to? Perfectionism. So avoiding obsessing over the perfect breakdown. And I think that's why paper can be really helpful, because we can scribble things out. We can make it the to-do list, for example, that we're doing here, breaking it into chunks. We make it so it's not perfect. And the reason it isn't perfect is because it is a tool to be able to do a thing. The tool itself and the process itself is not the end product. It's a space for us to be playful and to work with, so it works for us. And finally, a lack of flexibility, to being open to adjusting the chunks as we progress, because these, I think I said this just a second ago. If I haven't, I'm going to say it again or whatever. These are tools and these are experiments, and these are things that we can try. And trying new things can be really fun. I think my headphones just went, so I apologize. I hope you can still hear me. So in terms of a bit more of toolkit for success, so things like timers. Timers are so helpful for setting those challenges and for setting those time trials for us. Could use, for example, a 2-minute rule. Something takes less than 2 minutes, we do it immediately. The Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique is also around time. So the Pomodoro technique is around 15-minute breaks, or 15 or 25-minute chunks of time. And then after that, you take a break. Again, these things are around experimenting. If 15 minutes is too long, try 10 minutes. If 10 minutes is not enough, try 15 minutes. maybe a little bit of Goldilocks and trying different types of porridge. And then finally, around celebrating the micro wins. So finishing talking to you folks today. Super happy that you've had that we've been speaking together today. It's a micro win for me to be able to build my confidence when I'm speaking in front of lots of people. Also, the feeling of my headphones, I don't think they're working right now. So I'm trying to work through that, trying to be a swan, but just to let you know, it's a big win for me, but to be able to process this information and speak to you folks at the same time. So remember, personalize your toolkit, have fun with it. And oh, thanks, Trisha. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you. I'm glad you can still hear me. Um, personalize your toolkit. This is a space for you to be able to have fun, have fun with your toolkit, to be able to get into hacking your own dopamine. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Just because it doesn't work for someone, it might work for you. I think that's it. I think I've whizzed through that one. Does anybody have any questions or any scenarios they want to think about breaking down?
What if you have a project that's like really big and where you don't get that like immediate payoff or anything, like maybe studying for an exam or something? Yeah.
Really great question. And I think also you can use this type of framework to break I don't know if there's one big chunk, you break that studying for an exam. What does the exam consist of? It consists of these, there's not 8 or 9, I don't know. There's 9 blocks on here. The exam consists of 9 separate things. Biology, I don't know. Within biology, there is lots and lots of different things. I don't know why biology came into my head. Finding those small wins within that space that you can celebrate to then fuel your dopamine. So I don't know. You could test yourself at the end. You could speak to somebody. Yeah, I think it's around breaking the big things so you could do into 4 things, and then those 4 things could become 9, as an example, to get lower down the list of breaking things down.
Gorgeous. Let's see. There is a question in the chat. Task initiation is a huge problem. How do you overcome the mental inertia that is felt before starting a thought intensive task? Yes.
Oh, really, really great question. I think around one of the things that I've spoken about in a previous one of these sessions is around dopamine things. If there is also things in the burnout cycle where you may need to rest, and rest may be the most important thing that you can do for yourself to be able to give yourself that space. Task initiation, finding ways to dopamine things that work for you, so things that are fun, and use them to your advantage to get something done. Then again, there may be something in rest could also be a really vital part of getting back into this space where you can initiate tasks. And also, yes, Stacey, body doubling is amazing. It's so, so good. I've done quite a few body doubling sessions with Tiimo, and they've been amazing and so helpful, whether it's been like a random report I've needed to write or sending an email that I've been putting off for days, maybe weeks. It's been very, very helpful.
And then Samantha asks a very good question. Yeah, what is the best way to do this when you have several open projects in different stages? Yes.
Really great question. There's a lot of tools that can help with this. So there is a tool called Trello, and the idea is that you have things, and if you've got different stages of things, you can have them in columns. So rather than things being, you can move things through columns essentially. So you've got a to-do column, an in progress column, and a done column. You can visualize these things for different projects. I think technology can be so, so powerful because I think sometimes that we try and hold everything in our brains when we're trying to, I don't know, all of these projects are at different phases. And the only way you know that is because it's in here. The idea of removing some of that from your brain into technology can be super, super helpful. Setting reminders in calendars to check and update these things. There's also project management tools like Monday can be really, really helpful because it's very beautiful and visual, similar to the Trello board, but you can have it associated to different projects. So make it visual, make it as simple as possible, set some notifications or timers, and try and get it out of your brain and into a computer.
I love. Is there any other questions? Let's see. Yeah, I do love a Sansama moment. Okay, so I have a business pivot and relaunch to organize for my business after 10 years. Yay, very exciting. I'm trying to break it down and I'm bouncing around from one thing to another, trying to get things done, and it's not very time efficient. Do you have any suggestions for a very big project like that?
Yeah, I think body doubling could be really helpful. Speaking to potentially a coach to be able to give you, I think of coaching like personal training. I don't think coaches should be around for forever in somebody's world, but being able to say, actually, I want to do this one specific thing. Can you help me for an hour? I don't know, someone could come to you with a whiteboard with something that already like a business canvas. I can send you a template, Gary, if that would be helpful for a business canvas and some stuff that I've done previously when I'm trying to understand what I want my business to be. So trying to make it less about figures and facts because that doesn't work for my brain. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work for other people's. That's quite useful to some people, but for me, it's more about the impact that I'm making. So what I try and make my business canvas about, again, is something that works for me. So if you want me to send you the business canvas that I've used previously, I can. I can send that to you afterwards, Gary. It's not a problem.
And then there's someone asking for some very like productivity related apps. I feel like my employer would want me to mention that Tiimo does a lot of breaking down things as well. It's very visual, very much designed for neurodivergent folks. I will say, as someone who like also tries to, have some work-life separation and all that stuff, I love Sunsama. I've used it only for the last like couple months, but they also think a lot about neurodivergence and it's really worked for me. Some of the other ones feel really overwhelming, and that's a good one. You should try it out. Yeah. Does anyone else have any? I love the like shared brain. So if anyone has any, yeah, then please add them in. Yeah. Love the little oh it's it's hidden from other folks, but yay to the little Tiimo plug. Yes, Sun Sama. I'll just put a link in the chat. Um Actually I have a link that gives you a 30-day trial from body doubling. Yay. Okay, cool. Yeah. And yeah, if anyone else wants to share. Oh, and then I see someone use the Q&A. Gorgeous. What can you do when you struggle to start studying? My issue's getting the momentum to start. Yeah.
Really great question. I think the task initiation starting point is more around finding things that you find fun to start hacking your own dopamine. So I don't know whether there is also something really key around rest here. So I think a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is around productivity. Productivity for me isn't about doing all of the things all of the time because I've been very, very burnt by doing all of the things all of the time. And one of the things that I really value in my world is being able to take some rest breaks to be able to recompose and recombobulate, if that's even a word, to come back to myself. So rest, I think, is a really powerful tool to be able to give yourself the space to start being able to do things. I think another thing in terms of like very specific things, finding ways that you can dopamine your own brain. Things like music can be super, super powerful. So that if there's one song that absolutely makes you super excited to do something, using music can be really helpful. Using a body doubling session, using accountability with another person. It doesn't necessarily mean that that person's doing the same thing as you, but there's a bouncing of ideas, or just that that person is sat there, even with their cameras off, can be super, super helpful.
And then there's someone asking or saying, I work best with external deadlines, but I tend to not take my own deadlines seriously. I feel that so much. Any advice?
Yeah, I think external, if you know, I think it's really great when you know that something really does work for you. And if there's a way to bring that to action. So if there's a person in your work world and your personal world that you could form some accountability group with, that can be super, super powerful.
Yeah, a coach, one of your friends to bully you into doing the thing. All of that has worked for me. Um, and then what do you recommend for sticking to routines for healthy habits?
Amazing question. I've been reading a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And the premise of the book is how you break things down to the smallest part possible so you can accomplish them. The other things are around making it as visible as possible. So if it's a good habit, you want to make it as visible as possible. As a very good example of this habit, and I think I showed this in the last one, I have a habit tracker that I use every day. So you've got a whole week on here. On the left-hand side, it's some habits that I want to do every day. And then I've got Monday to Sunday at the top. So essentially, I want to read a page of a book every day. I want to do a little bit of yoga, but I've specified that it's 15 minutes of yoga. So I'm very specific about this piece of paper is always with a pen in my room. So when I'm in my room, the first things I do when I get up in the morning are stretch, read that book, and do 10 squats. It's becoming part of my routine because this thing is really obvious. You can also use this stuff in the inverse. So if we're trying to remove bad habits, we can remove the visibility of that thing. So I don't know if you I look at Instagram probably too much. So removing Instagram from my phone, or I always, if I have a packet of biscuits, I eat a lot of the biscuits. So I don't buy the biscuits as an example. So you can use the idea of healthy habits, making it as visible as possible to stick to something, and also making it as easy as possible. The barrier to entry for me doing 10 squats a day is this. It might look quite complex, but it isn't. It's every day I write a little line, and then I'm super excited when I can do the five. So I'm on week 7 now of my habit tracker, which for me, I'm very happy about. And the other thing is, if it doesn't work, I'm going to start something else. I'm not going to beat myself up because I haven't done it. This has worked for 7 weeks for me, which is amazing, and it feels like it's still working, so I'm still going to continue to use it. I hope that was helpful. I hope that wasn't waffling.
I love using what I feel like a lot of us were taught in like middle school, the like SMART goal system, and it actually working. It's pretty cool. And then how do you know when you need to rest, or how do you know you're burnt out? Yeah, it's hard to tell the difference between needing to rest and feeling burnt out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really different for everybody. I think the signs that I'm burnt out is I can become quite apathetic about things. And also, this is not medical advice. This is my experience from my world, and it will look different for different people. And seeking medical advice should be from a medical professional. But from my point of view, I can feel quite apathetic. I feel really tired, and I feel like all I want to do is look at my phone. And when those things start to happen, I can start to um, I start to notice it a bit more, whether it's that I need to get outside, I need to see some sunshine. One of the things that I know is coming up is I live in Europe, so we're going into the winter, which means there's going to be a lot less sunlight, which means that I've got a sad lamp. So I need to make sure that I get sun in my eyes. But there's some of the kind of signs for me. Um,
And then, what are some of the maybe typical signs of ADHD, or maybe how does it show up for you? Yes.
how does ADHD show up for me? So my ADHD shows up for me is that I can be really hyperactive. And what hyperactivity means for me is it's mostly in my brain. So we get taught one of the things that I think is it's changing a lot now. But when I was younger, ADHD was very specific to young boys, and I've never been a young boy. So the symptoms that you see in the diagnosis criteria didn't always match me. However, things like real hyperactivity, my brain is always whirring. I'm always thinking about something. five things at the same time. I can make really quick decisions that look to people like I haven't thought anything through, but I have. I've just thought them through at hyper speed. And that's taken me a really long time to realize that it's actually okay. And if someone asks me to talk through my thought process, I can explain that. Um, Other things for me, I can be very chaotic. So I talked to you about habits and habit trackers. I'm trying to create structures, and I am creating structures in my own life to make things as easy as possible for me to make kind decisions for myself. And it's not all, it doesn't always work and it's not always perfect, but I try and give myself the benefit of the doubt to be kind to myself, to explore what works for me.
And oh, also, yeah, for me, I just thought what I now know as ADHD was just like intense anxiety for a long time. And then none of the medication I tried worked. And then I figured it out and it was like very, very eye-opening. So it looks so different for everyone. But yeah, hope you get the care that you need. And then do you recommend doing things in smaller chunks or one bigger session? When I do smaller chunks, I feel like I'm working all the time.
I think that's a really great point, and I think it goes back to the experimentation thing. How about doing something in a slightly bigger chunk, or just um, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, I think is a really great example of this. When Goldilocks is eating the different porridge in the different bears' houses, the first one is too salty, the second one is too hot, the third one is too sweet. I can't remember the exact things, but she tries different types of porridge, and then the last one works for her. It's the perfect saltiness, it's the perfect sweetness, it's the um perfect temperature. So experiment with different things, and also to try and have a bit of fun with it. So if something is, I don't know, if a big session may make more sense to you, try it. And also finding your own reward system can be really helpful. So if something's a challenge, flip it and go, actually, what I want to do is something different. I tried something different. Go me. Like, I'm so proud of myself. I tried this thing. It may not have worked how I want it to, so I'm going to try something else. And you kind of feed that positive cycle of kindness to the things that I don't know. When I was a kid, I was always too flighty, too smart for my own good. You know, I never paid attention in class. If only you were just like this. Actually, I'm perfectly fine as I am. Some people will like me, some people will not like me. But as Goldilocks, in terms of the perfect porridge for me, I've got that for myself. And that doesn't mean that I'm bragging about my life at all. It means that I've got to a stage where I'm comfortable with myself. And that is the one of the proudest things I've ever done for myself.
Yes, and just because it's really fresh in my mind, Bella and I did a workshop like earlier this week on self-love, and this came up a lot too around just like, yeah, being told you're too sensitive or something, and then like kind of reframing it in a really nice way. So if you want to watch that, yeah, it was a really sweet session. And then. There is a question, comment, incoming posts, magazines, papers, etc that they should read tend to make piles on all surfaces, that kind of like tornado in the home vibes, invoices, and then the postman keeps bringing new ones while the old ones are still on piles. I think the question around that is like, how do you stop your house from being a tornado? When your brain's a tornado, maybe.
Yeah, I think the organizing workspace setup that we went through as part of this workshop around, is there a way that you can sort these piles? So if there are four sets of things, so there is, I don't know, stuff you want to keep, stuff you want to donate, stuff that can be thrown away, can be a very cathartic process as well. And also to start with a short time frame. It's okay to start small. It's okay to do one corner, one section, maybe do it with somebody else that you trust, or have a video call with somebody. They don't necessarily need to be with you, but that trusted person that you can say, I'm going to do this today. I've done it with some of my ADHD coaching clients. They've wanted to tidy a room that they haven't done for a period of time. And actually the coaching session is focused on that because that's what's in their mind at that specific moment in time. And that's completely okay. that's what they needed from that coaching session. So we do things like we're talking about organizing the workspace. What do you want to keep? What do you want to throw away? And sometimes just externalizing that conversation can be really helpful when I don't know if you've seen, is it Marie Kondo, the lady that says, "Does this bring me joy?" So when you pick something up, the idea is, does this bring me joy? This pencil case actually does bring me a lot of joy. It's perfectly formed, and I don't need to bring a million pens with me because I have a habit to buy lots of stationery. So this pencil case really does bring me joy. But that kind of thing, and it can help kind of the process of changing the bit of environment that you want to change in that moment.
I love. And then I have a question that I think actually, so there's a question around, is there any other psychometric tests available other than the Diva 5 to diagnose ADHD? We actually have a session coming up with a licensed therapist, and it's going to be more of a like ask me anything session. So I think you should join that. Pasha is wonderful. We've done a couple of events with them, and they are a really good person to ask that because I feel like maybe Gina doesn't doesn't know this, or yeah, I don't know. Gina, do you do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's probably best to ask a therapist, but there are some free things that you can do. But I think speaking to somebody with the right skill set can also be really, really helpful to
Yeah.
kind of support that discussion point.
Yeah, definitely attend that session. It's wonderful. And yeah, you can find all the like links to all our sessions on our Luma page. So yeah, sign up if you want to. And then how do you deal with decision paralysis?
Great question. I deal with decision paralysis by acknowledging that it's decision paralysis, acknowledging that I'm in this fight or flight state of not really sure what to do next because there are so many options. And then genuinely, I set myself a timer and I do one. And if it doesn't work, I'll do the other one. That's what works for me. It doesn't, you could get so far with one and actually realize it's the other one. So getting started can be for me, the most helpful way to get out of decision paralysis.
Yes. For me also, like sometimes I just ask someone in my life to make the decision. And if I feel really strongly about it, someone else making the decision is gonna like illuminate that. And if it's fine that they made the decision, then they made the decision for me. And it's actually really nice. You can flip a coin too if it's not like a huge thing like selling your house or something. Then like flipping a coin can be nice too. Um, and then do you have anything? Yeah. Do you want to share a little bit about how you got your ADHD diagnosis if you want to? Someone asks. Yeah.
Yeah, I can share a bit about my diagnosis. So I'm based in the UK, and I was looking at social media and a lot of things started resonating with me. So I went on a bit of a rabbit warren tour of trying to understand more about ADHD, so researching it. I went down a private route in the UK, and the reason I went down the private route is that during lockdown, I wasn't spending a lot of money, and it felt really important to me to be able to make that decision and to understand a bit more about myself. However, I don't believe that diagnosis is everything. It was helpful for me, but there are our brains are beautiful exactly as they are, and finding ways to maybe that self-kindness session sounds amazing, and I'm going to check out the Luma page because the self-kindness and the self-love of understanding ourselves doesn't take away from a medical diagnosis in the slightest, but it does, I think, help feel the I'm enough, and I really am enough.
Yeah, I agree. I got my ADHD diagnosis this summer and it was really validating, but it was like deeply inaccessible. I also actually went private, and my partner, who is a pretty high support needs autistic person, was on a wait list for like 4 years, like needing support. And so it's a really shitty and inaccessible system. So if you can like validate yourself, I realized actually that a lot of the tools that I use now as like a diagnosed person, I already had access to before. So just like giving yourself the gift of like taking care of yourself and like recognizing kind of what you need at any point can be really validating. I'm actually going to share the slides to that self-love session right now if anyone wants to see it as well. So here are the slides. And then I asked a question wrong earlier. So if you have a like a ton of things that are piling up, a lot of posts that's piling up, you feel really like overwhelmed with everything, and then the post person keeps adding stuff on top, like how do you, yeah, what do you do?
I think these kind of things are different for everybody. I think body doubling could be a way of opening some of that post, setting timers to open a couple of pieces of post, rewarding yourself for opening a piece of post. And I think some of this can be around breaking that shame cycle of the post piles being there. It's okay that they're there. There's an acknowledgement that it's okay, and to find somebody to work through that pile together. Maybe it's a not necessarily a fun thing to open the post, but there's some reward system in there around opening one letter. And what happens when you open one, it can then start that cycle to then open the second one. If I don't know, by the end of this call, you've opened one of those pieces of post. As an example, you absolutely don't have to do that. This space isn't for that. But if you wanted to, um, maybe use this space to open one of those letters, and then it can, going back to that Atomic Habits book by James Clear, the idea is around habit stacking. So if there's something that you already do, like, I don't know, every morning you make yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, you could, when you have that cup of coffee, you open one piece of post. So using a habit that you already have to then tack something on, so then it becomes part of the routine that you're already doing, and then it can lessen that overwhelm.
Yes. Also, if you have community, a partner, partners, whatever, what I like to do with people in my life is like oftentimes we find different things hard. And so someone may like love going through mail. I personally I'm kind of into it. So you could ask someone to like, sort it into a important and a non-important. Maybe something is just like newspapers that nobody asked for, and the other stuff is like bills that you need to pay. So maybe you could ask someone else to do that initial sorting so it feels less like intense and overwhelming as well. Yeah. Is there any other questions, thoughts, anything that folks have? And then as folks think about if they have any more questions, Gina, do you want to share what the last two parts of the framework are?
Yes, the last two parts of the framework are around clarification and also celebration. So I find it difficult to share the screen, so I'm just going to use my hands. Imagine my hands are four separate parts. The first part of the framework that we've been through previously, that I think there should be a recording on Luma, is around dopamining it. So this is around finding bits of the parts of dopamine to make things fun for yourself. Today we've gone through how we break things down. Section of can't speak. Stage three of the framework is around clarification. So I want to do this thing. Sometimes it's around externalization and making sure that the thing we're doing is the thing that we should be doing right now. And sometimes it can be just a chat. And then the fourth one, as I touched on earlier, is my favorite part of the framework is around celebration, micro, macro, huge celebrations around how we can then feed that into the cycle. So then we're positively reinforcing ourselves when we do things that we're already doing. I think we lose that as children, that positive reinforcement of like, well done, you did that thing, like you walked 2 steps today. I take that into my life. I walked 2 steps today. I've done 10 squats today. As an example, I'm super proud of myself and I will continue to be proud of myself. And yeah, we'll talk about celebration. I won't bang on about how proud I am of myself like that. I promise.
We're proud. Another gorgeous example, one of my friends is about to reach her like 700 days of Duolingo, and we saw someone else on the internet celebrate it. So I'm going to make her a cake for it because why the heck not? I don't think
Yeah,
I could get to 700 days, so we are going to celebrate the heck out of that.
nice.
And then Amy asked, how do you create a reward system? Yeah.
Um, I think it would be we've covered this separately in the dopamine it session. So I think it would be quite cool to go through that, to go through the presentation set, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to cover it in such a short space of time.
It is a gorgeous presentation. And yeah, if anyone wants the transcript of anything, you can let me know as well. But yeah, the I'm gonna actually so the I will be sharing the slides and the recordings to both sessions in the follow-up email that you're gonna get tomorrow. Since I goofed the first time I tried to send it and I didn't send it, you're gonna get it in your inbox tomorrow. And yeah, I think with that. Thank you all so much for joining. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feels, whatever, you are so welcome to reach out to me. If you have any questions for Gina that come up, late tonight, you're welcome to write them to me and I can forward them. You can also find her website and submit via your contact form, I think, which you have. And yeah, thank you all so much. I love the comments. Thank you. Seeing some familiar names as well. It's so good to have you. Also, the second you close Zoom, it's gonna just ask you like what you thought of this session. Really helps me so much to convince the people in the sky at Tiimo that these sessions are wonderful and helpful for our community. If you tell them via that survey, yeah, I want to keep hosting these sessions for y'all, and we have another couple of really cool, yeah, sessions planned in the next couple weeks. So let me know what kind of topics you want to see. Let me know what you want Gina back for, all that good stuff. Obviously, she'll be back for parts 3 and 4 of this. But yeah, any thoughts, feelings, feedback, I would love to hear it. And yeah, Gina, any parting words?
Thank you so much, folks. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for trusting me to hold some space for you today. And I hope you've enjoyed it. So have a great rest of your day. I'll see you soon.
Amazing.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, y'all.